Welcome to episode 4 of the Cranky Fan Podcast on the FL Teams channel on YouTube. Brought to you as usual by nobody. No sponsor yet, so we could use a sponsor. I am your host, the Cranky Fan, and today we'll do some more Rays talk. We have a bonus episode this week. Usually we do one a week, but I was able to get a very special guest to be on the show from the Locked On Rays show, Ulises Sambrano. Ulises, thank you for joining. I have to say first that I am a huge fan of your show, huge fan of all the Locked On shows. I listen to Locked On Knicks, Locked On Giants, Locked On Rays every day, and it's an honor to have you on. So thanks for joining.
Well, thank you for the invite. It's really nice to hear that you are not making us only your first listen, but you're also making us your second listen, maybe third and fourth. So that's really nice to hear, and I'm sure I'll be able to send that to that recording to the bosses upstairs. So thank you for that.
Yeah, tell Locke, he's a big Utah Jazz guy, and he was giving my boys at Locked On Knicks some grief this week. They jumped on his show. They were talking about Donovan Mitchell, and it was pretty funny. So. But
okay.
No, it's a great network,
sure
and they're great shows. And I'm just glad to be able to talk a little Rays with you here. Now that we're at the All-Star break, it's a good time to kind of assess what's happened, what's going forward the rest of the season. And I thought, we DM quite a bit, during the season. I was on one of your live shows once. We did a thing. We were complaining. Yes. I was arguing about Michael Wacha.
Yes, good times, huh?
Yeah,
and then he ends up just crushing it with the Red Sox. Until the injury, but yes.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, to me, it's like the Red Sox, if, 2/5 of your starting rotation is Michael Wacha and Rich Hill, I'm not worried about them. And I'll still believe Michael Wacha really being good when I see it over a sustained period. So he's in the rearview mirror. I don't want to talk about him anymore.
Let's not.
Yeah. Let's talk about Rays, obviously. First half, where we are. I mean, I think we have 17 guys right now on the injured list. It's an act of the baseball gods. We are still even in the wild card hunt. My question for you is this still sustainable with, the guys that are out, some guys are starting to come back. Brandon Lau just came back, but Wander's ways off. These pitchers, seem like they're coming back, then they're not. Do you think this is sustainable with this level of dipping so far into Durham and prospects, that we can hang around the wild card and still make it?
Well, first I would change that wording to wild card hunt to wild card leading. I mean, if you look at the American League, it's the Yankees, Astros, and then the Rays with the best records. So it's kind of insane. If you have seen all of these injuries, you mentioned 17. I think now it's up to 18 after Jalen Beeks got injured as well. So now, I mean, it's like one after the other. And you start to look at what expectations were, right? Before a pitch was thrown in the 2022 season, this was a team that had just won 100 games. And so you're expecting more or so the same kind of level, like above 95 wins, go back-to-back division championships. Like, this is what they're aiming for. Mm-hmm. And then if we would have just jumped from April 6th before a pitch was thrown to what are we now, July 21st, and we are seeing the standings, we would have all had a heart attack and like, oh my goodness, something went terribly wrong, But then life is not like that. So we have seen what has happened from April 7th to July 21st. And I feel like, on the contrary, most Rays fans are like, how are we 51-41, basically fielding a quad A half of a lineup? I mean, when you have, the lineup that the Rays have had for such a long, sustained period of time, and they're still leading the wild card. They're 51-41. More than half the season has gone by. Yeah, I think this team is leaning way towards making the playoffs than not making the playoffs. But I wouldn't say anything is 100% sure that they're going to make the playoffs. But if I were a betting man, which I rarely am, I would bet for the Rays are going to be a playoff team. Yes.
My thought during the offseason and my predictions for this year was, they're taking a chance trading Austin Meadows and hoping Josh Lowe is ready to go. Joey Wendell was a guy where I just didn't see a spot for him, quite honestly, and they're not going to spend the money on a guy who's going to be a utility infielder. I mean, it's easy in hindsight to say, oh, if Wendell was here. But if you look at what the infield was supposed to be when the season was getting ready to start, there was no place for him really. And we're just not a team that's going to spend money on utility guys. But I thought the pitching would be a little strong. I thought the pitching would be stronger than last year. I thought, guys coming back in the year, McClanahan taking that step. I mean, nobody expected the step he ended up taking, but I thought Shane Baz would be in the rotation for the whole year, which would be a step up from the Michael Wakas of the world and the Rich Hills when we started from last year. Yeah, I mean, I bet the over. It was 89 wins before the season started. I took the over on that. It looks strong. And it is shocking to me I've not ripped up that ticket yet. That it's still me. We're still on pace for, I think, 91 wins right now. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
We both watch the games on a nightly basis, and we just see, guys like Brett Phillips, guys like Taylor Walls. They're just not major. Brett Phillips is a great guy to have on your roster if you only use him for late inning defensive replacement, pinch running, things like that, utility. But when he has to start 5 nights a week, it's not a major league hitter. I mean, he's gone through some brutal stretches. I think this front office gambled a little bit with the depth. I mean, depth is always going to be a problem with this team until we have a new stadium. We all know that. I think they gambled on prospects and guys they thought were ready to come up, and those guys just haven't worked out. And now you have to rely on them, not for bench help, but to start. And this is where we are.
And I think that's an unfortunate consequence of the crazy amount of injuries, because Peter Bendix and Eric Neander and Kevin Cash and all of the Excel spreadsheets and databases that they have did not think, oh, we're going to have 18 guys on the IL, and Vidal Brujan and Taylor Walls and Josh Lowe and Isaac Paredes and Brett Phillips are going to all get major playing time, and there will be no Mike Zunino. And when there is Mike Zunino, he looks like the 2019 Mike Zunino, not the 2021 Mike Zunino. It's just been an incredible amount of injuries that have now put the mantra that the Rays have had for so long, since 08, which is put guys in a position to succeed. That's it. Like, if it mashes lefties, that's what we play him for. If he mashes righty, that's what he's going to be facing. We're not going to put situations for these guys that they're not able to perform well. But because of the injuries, you've had to see Brett Phillips face a lefty, and it's ugly. You've had to see Vidal Brujan bad as a lefty, which might be even worse than seeing Brett Phillips as a starter. You've had to see Taylor Walls, at second and third in the beginning of the season, making silly mistakes because, he's a really good glove at shortstop, but this is the major leagues. Like, just changing the second and third, it's not that easy. So you put so many guys in so many positions to not succeed, that you've seen all of these silly and very frustrating errors happen and lack of production in a way that we haven't seen a team that has been so well constructed lately perform. Like this, we're not used to that. And I've said this before, this just means that we are incredibly, and I have to say it, we're spoiled. We've been spoiled since 2018, since that 90-win season. All of us as a fandom have now expected more, which is not that bad thing. That is not a bad thing to expect more for your team, right? You dedicate 162 plus days of your life every year for this team. You're expected to want more and more and more, right? But because of that, we've gotten spoiled. We are arguing about a 51-41 team not meeting expectations. Let's talk to the Pittsburgh Pirates that have not done anything since 2013, the Cincinnati Reds, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Miami Marlins. Let's talk to the Orioles. Finally, they're above 500 and they're rejoicing, as they should. Like, there are so many fan bases that would love to be in the Rays position, but us with this, perspective that we have, we've grown spoiled, and we have to talk about that.
And I'm a major Kevin Crash critic. Kevin Crash, I believe you're the one who coined that phrase, which to me, that should
Yeah.
be in Cooperstown on its own. But we'll get to him in a minute. But I am not blaming Kevin Cash or the front office or anything for this season. I don't think this team is underachieving. I don't think this team is, short of expectations. To me, it's anybody with half a brain says it's the injuries. The problem is this team, and I live up in New York and I deal with a lot of Yankee fans who all they care about is the Yankees and maybe what the Red Sox are doing, who just don't understand. Like they don't bother to look at the rest of the league. They know more about their team than any other fan base, but they know less about the rest of the league. I mean, they still call it Tampa, still call it the Devil Rays. I mean, they're clowns, but tangent I go. They don't understand. It's like, oh, well, when you faced us last month up at Yankee Stadium, we didn't have our starting first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, center fielder, two of our starting pitchers, and half our bullpen. Other than that, we only gave up 2 earned runs in the entire series.
Yes.
And if this was the Yankees, with these injuries, you'd be hearing the sob stories on ESPN for 24 hours a day about the number of injuries. And, it's just we're the Devil Rays. We're the lowly Devil Rays. Don't worry about them. They're cute. I like them, but whatever. So I'm giving that. I don't feel like this team is missing out on expectations because of performance or bad mistakes that were made in the offseason or any of that. To me, it's just a simple fact of, can this team get either healthy enough in time to legitimately sustain what they're doing through the rest of the year, or can they sustain it with just this core group, which looks like it's going to be here for a while? The Taylor Wall is going to have to play a lot. Brett Phillips is going to have to play a lot. Brujan at some point will be back up here, or if not, any one of the other prospects that are right on the edge coming up. I mean, is this enough to sustain?
Boy, I hope so. We are getting some help. Yeah, right. We're trading Boz for Patino, basically, right? So we never had Patino and Boz on the same active roster. So we're basically switching out Patino for Boz. Boz looked pretty good.
And to be fair,
clunky. Yeah.
To be fair, we never really had Boz this year either. I mean,
what was that? 4 starts, 5 starts? Yeah.
And 2 were terrible. Yeah. So it wasn't like we were all of a sudden losing, Shane McClanahan or anything. So
right. With Shane, I would say it's a little bit of the rookie status expectations. Like we are just, thinking, oh, he's going to be like Shane. It's like, dude, like, let's give him some time. The clunky innings got him. And that's such a rookie thing with young pitchers. Like he was great for 4 innings. And then 1 inning is just complete awful. Like he just loses it. That's just a young pitcher.
Of course. That's why the expectation for him is like the 4th starter right now. I wasn't worried about him. But
thank you. Yeah. That's exactly what us as a fandom, which I think not a lot of people had that, by the way. I think that's the right way of looking at young pitchers. Like if he can be a solid 4, that's awesome. Next year, 3. And then the other year, boom, I want him to be top of the rotation. That's the progression that we should aim for. But yeah, so we're going back. You're changing Boz for Patino. Hopefully Patino does well. I like his stuff. The command is just a little bit iffy at times. With the bullpen, we saw Pete Fairbanks come back. I've always had to have Pepto-Bismol right next to me when I'm watching Pete Fairbanks pitch because the results are there usually. I'm not going to lie about the results.
Thompsonitis.
But it's the struggle. It's the Houdini act that he has to perform in order to get the outs that I'm not a really big fan of, but the results are there. So hopefully that's a big high leverage arm that can get us there. But it's
you'd rather
honestly
have
the offense.
You'd rather have a guy like him over Garza, though, as part of your arsenal.
Yes, he makes the bullpen better. Yes, or whoever you're throwing out there at these Luke Bard, for example. But going back to what is the biggest thing? It's the offense, man. So who is that push? You mentioned him before, Brendan Lau coming back. That's awesome. That is fantastic. However, you still got the Yu Changs, the Brett Phillips, the Josh Lowe's, and the Taylor Walls that be the rookie thing, be the, hey, we just got this trade guy, or be the fact that, hey, he's just going through a cold streak. one of them, two of them, hopefully all of them, but at least one or two of that group needs to step it up this half, or it's going to be treading water until game 162. It's not going to be like, oh, okay, we've got the wild card sealed up with 2 weeks to go. No, if none of these guys pan out this year, offensively speaking, you're looking at game 161 and you're looking at the standings, you're looking at the MLB scores. That's what's going to happen if none of these guys pull off a second half worthy of something, man.
Yeah, we remember game 162 back one now fondly because we know we won it. But I was at the Trop that night and it was not fun, especially when the Yankees jumped out to that huge lead. That was awful. So I don't want to do that again. I want to have, okay, we're done the last week and relax. You made a point about the rookies, and I think there's something that a lot of Rays fans don't do that I try to do is I'm not writing any of these guys off long-term, like the Bruhans. It's even the Taylor Walls. It's like you have to compartmentalize till 2022 and the future of this franchise. Like people are like, oh,
yes,
get rid of Brujan because he can't hit. He stinks. He can't hit lefty, can't hit righties, blah, blah, blah. It's like these guys are rushed up here. They're not ready to, and even Wander Franco, I can make an argument that he got up here a year early, based upon COVID and this progression. So just because a guy like Brujan is, brutal this year, that doesn't mean I'm ready to, dump him on the first trade just to get some slugger rental for 2 months. I think we have to, and that's why I think you guys brought it up on your show, are we buyers, sellers, or holders? I am 100% a holder on this team because it was an extraordinary set of circumstances why we're in this situation we're in now. And I don't want to tear down anything because I feel like the window for this team started a year or so ago and is open for a couple of years going forward. So why are we going to take things apart because we are a seller? We're not going to do it this year.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like the window is not closed because if the Rays don't, honestly, I'm not even ready to say it. Like I believe that this team is going to the playoffs. But even if they were to die off in the wild card series, which would be a disappointment, it still leaves the window, I believe, wide open, So why would you sell off your pieces for, let's get a high A guy, a couple of double A? Like, no, like you push through. So no, I would not be sellers. I agree with you. I'd be holders. And again, you're getting some pieces back, hopefully, that can help you. We never talk about Tyler Glasnow, but he himself has been throwing. He's been talking that he could come back in the bullpen, pitching 1 inning at a time in September. I mean, you talk about how the pitching, I think, has been the most beautiful thing this year because there hasn't been a lot of beautiful things for this team. But the pitching, you just said it, in the Yankee series, like no names are keeping that lineup to 2 runs every game. Like it's ridiculous what this pitching staff has been doing, right? So you're telling me that you can add a Pete Fairbanks? You're telling me that you can add a Tyler Glasnow for the September chase? You're telling me that a Yanni Chirinos is coming back, and also next to him in the same team is Brendan McKay? I mean, these are talented guys that, yes, although coming back from rehab, I would rather have those guys than the Luke Bards, the Garza Juniors, and guys that have been put into situations, again, to not succeed. Like that's been the mantra for the Rays. Just put guys in a position to succeed. And this year, because of the injuries, we've seen that hasn't really been possible.
Who, other than maybe the Mets when DeGrom comes back, who, if you're in a short series, Glasnow, McClanahan, who has a better 1-2 punch than that getting into a short series? That's a good one.
I'm glad you mentioned the boys in Queens because I think the Grom Scherzer might be an all-time 1-2 punch if we ever get to see that. That'd be fantastic. I think the Phillies in 2010 they had H2O, right? They had Halladay, Hamels, and Oswalt. That was nasty. That's a 1-3 at that time. That was crazy. But again, the Rays.
DeGrom is about the same with Glasnow. DeGrom, I think, just had another setback. I think they had to shut him down a little bit.
Did he? I haven't heard it.
I
Oh,
believe he
okay.
did. I think I saw that on Twitter yesterday. So I don't even know if he's coming back or not. We'll have to see.
What a punch for that Mets fandom. And that's crazy, because they've done so well for most of the season, and they're still, I believe, leading the division, right? I think Atlanta's like maybe 2 or
They're
3
still
games
up.
back, but it's
But
yeah.
unlike other teams that kind of falter, it's not they had this huge lead, but just Atlanta went insane. I mean, the Mets have been pretty even Steven the whole year. It's just Atlanta all of a sudden had that 1 month where they were like 24-5 or something crazy. Otherwise, they'd run away with like the Yankees are.
That is hopefully what can happen for the Rays. It happened for the Red Sox last month before they took a turn in July. But again, the Red Sox went insane. I think they won like 20, 22 games in that month. They only gained half a game to the Yankees. So the hole that the Red Sox, the Jays, and the Rays have now gotten themselves into because of really underperforming play and just tremendous play by the Yankees. They've just played like a machine. Now they're going to be talking about this team like the 22 Yankees, not the 27 Yankees.
You don't live up here. You don't know how bad it is. It's ridiculous. And they're like, if we don't get, but they're still like, we got to get Juan Soto.
Oh my goodness. Like, of course they do. They do. Yeah.
What's the old saying?
They're going to trade, and they're going to trade, and they're going to get them for Andujar and Joey Gallo. I bet that's the of course.
You've heard the old saying, they have a loaf of bread on their arm. They're complaining they have no meat. That's them. I mean, they have. It's ridiculous up here. They're just so delusional. But I don't even want.
Yeah, I think we get the light version. Yeah, I think we get the light version of the Yankee fans that are living here, but we it's like the Diet Coke that we get down here for the fans. But you
get Yankee fans on steroids down there because I grew up here. I lived in Florida for 14 years. I know what New Yorkers are like. When you move down to Florida, your accent gets a little thicker. Your fandom gets a little louder. Your obnoxiousness, it's like they just get on a bus from Long Island and they replace Sunrise Highway with US 19. And I could say that because I was one of them. I came back up there, but you get the worst version of Boston guy and Yankee guy.
Oh, thank you. Here, I didn't want to say it, but we get it pretty bad.
I'll say it. Yeah, believe me.
Okay, good.
I'll deal with those on my Giants show later. Those guys, don't worry about it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no. But when you go to a Yankee game up here, it's not that bad. I mean, go to a Ranger game with your Lightning gear is far, far worse. Yeah. I
do want to visit Yankee Stadium, but they've told me, there are some sections where you do not want to sit. I think the right field bleachers are definitely not a no-go.
Well, they're clowns out there anyway. You don't want to sit out there, first of all. But I have tickets for every time the Yankees are there, behind home plate, up top, and it's perfectly fine. In fact, you come with me. We'll go to a game together. It'll be fine.
There you go. I'll hold you to that, man. I'll hold you to it. No, but look. Going back, just one more thing.
Yeah.
If you look at this revelation that Jeffrey Springs has been doing for the pitching staff, Drew Rasmussen did it last year. Like, it's really insane how they turn two relievers into solid pieces of the starting rotation. So when we say Johnny Chirinos, when we say Brendan McKay, when we say Tyler Glasnow, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that those two guys, just by bumping off the Garza Juniors and the Luke Barts, they're going to make this team better. And that's a really good part of this team, is the pitching staff. So if you're going to make that better, that means that other team is going to score less runs, which is great for this offense, because this offense cannot find a way to have a stable, run production. So by taking that out, I think it's BA said it last time in the broadcast. He said 4 is the magic run number for the Rays this season. Like, they do not barely lose if they score more than 4 runs.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So what this pitching staff has done, keeping most teams to 3 runs or less, it's unreal.
It's I just hope it's sustainable. I mean, that's the only thing for me is just, these guys we're relying on, they're out kicking their coverage. I just hope they can keep doing it. That's my only thing.
Me too.
I'll talk a little about Kevin Cash, because that is a topic of mine that, fires me up on Twitter all the time.
Of course,
people agree with me. People disagree with me. I know we've had a couple discussions about it on DMs about it. I want to get your take on something that my big criticism with Kevin Cash has always been that I think he worries too much about the big picture than individual games. And I've been thinking about it over the All-Star break that is it a Kevin Cash problem or is it an organizational philosophy that's a problem, not necessarily over the 162, but when we get into like the postseason, for example. So I'm not suggesting like, a lot of people think, a lot of conspiracy theorists, like there's some master spreadsheet out there that every move that's made, Kevin Cash, all he does is refer to the spreadsheet and plugs and plays. No, he's not a chess player moving chessboard things around the board. But the philosophy of, taking a guy out after 85 innings, after 85 pitches after 5 innings, or, worrying too much about righty, lefty, even though there might be 5 career at bats, or, letting a reliever hang out to dry with a 2-run lead, and let's letting him, if he's not doing well, because you're worrying about, well, we're playing 5 games in 6 nights. Is there too much of that worrying about the big picture that we throw away wins that might impact, well, are we the second wild card or the first wild card? Are we the first wild card or the division? And then especially in the World Series or in the playoffs, where we've seen, and I was at that game, I was at game 6 when Kevin Cash pulled Blake Snell, and I had to be physically restrained by my wife from running on the field and punching out our manager. Is that's just that overall philosophy, overall good or bad for this team? Or is it just Kevin Cash, his own decisions?
I think it's a structural thing. It's not Kevin Cash. I think it comes down from an organizational point of, we have you named like 7 different scenarios. So I'm not going to name them all again, but by you naming 7 of the things that they tend to do, that tells you that there is a set structure, that there is a set core of beliefs of what will make you a good baseball team at the end of 162. Now, most of those things are very frustrating for us fans that remember looking at box scores in the newspaper, which I did when I was growing up, because I was a total nerd at 7 years old. And so I was looking at newspapers for the box scores, So those little things that are structurally for the Rays do get bothersome, especially when they blow up. But the results have been there, that they work. However, just because they work does not mean that they should always be followed, or they should always, like, it's not an obligatory, well, we want to do righty, lefty, righty, but like you said, but you know what? Vidal Brujan hasn't been really that hot against righties, and we don't really want him as a lefty. Let's switch out for another righty. Make Isaac Paredes take that at bat instead of Vidal Brujan. Those things. That's what's frustrating, at least to me personally, is that fine, have your structure. If you're very smart people, you're a very smart organization. You've shown it year after year, but where is that human touch? Where is that? Because at the end of the day, we're just happy to see these human beings launch baseballs with a spherical wooden bat into the stratosphere 450 feet away. Like, that's an amazing thing, right?
Right.
So it's entertainment. It's a sport. So to just always go down to this structure just because the statistical analysis that you did, or the intern McGee did, came out and said this is the best way to win the ball game, it just takes away from the special moments.
Well, that's my point, is that I don't think they're doing everything they can to win every game. To me, there's like the saying, I think, what's his name, post-game show guy,
Neil Solondz.
Lackey. Yeah. Yeah. He'll probably never be a guest on this show because
it's okay.
Yeah.
We've
I'm not on the payroll.
I vented against him. I think like 3 weeks ago. I did not like what he said in the post game. I think he was just like scoffing at fans, and I was just like, that's not your job. Don't scoff at people.
I know you're on the payroll and you're supposed to carry the water, but we're not fools. But forget him. My point. Oh, what he said something like this team does not chase wins. So the philosophy then is if we're down by 2 runs in the 7th inning, we are not going to put never mind our A pen, our B pen in. We're just giving up. Like, I get it. This team is offensively challenged, but you're cutting a game short by saying, well, we'll worry. We're not going to waste an arm tonight for tomorrow. And that's part of that game that 162 game thing where, my questions are, related to this is this roster good enough? Like, does it really matter the way they're doing this kind of philosophy that could they still win just by trying to win every game? And also, what would a manager like, let's say if Buck Showalter was this manager, an old school guy, what would he do with this roster? Would there be much of a difference? Because I'm still trying to parse out, is Kevin Cash actually a good manager or not, or is he just a victim of circumstance?
Good both questions. Wow. Man, I think with the chasing wins thing, I think you have to be a little bit more structurally aware, and this is going to be frustrating. But you have to, I think, follow that set of structural values that they've created as strictly as possible this year. Why? Because of the roster that you have. If you have Brendan Lau and Wander Franco, and you had all of these guys actually performing at the level that you want them to, and Manny Margot, for God's sakes, how can we talk about Manuel Margot and how he has been completely injured and he was fantastic this season, and we don't have his defense, we don't have his at-bats, we don't have his clutch factor, which I know analytical people hate the word clutch. They think it's blasphemy.
There's no such thing. It's a mythical thing. It
exists. Yeah, exactly. Well, we haven't even had that guy. So I think this is a season where we're going to be more frustrated because they have to follow the statistical analysis, because the statistical analysis says most times we're going to win if we do this. And they can't deviate from that too much following every game to go win every time, because the roster does not allow them to. It doesn't, man. It doesn't.
This is not a new thing with this organization and this manager.
It's not.
They are rigid and structured. They're the team that came up with we don't want the starting pitcher facing the third time around thing. And, that's the Blake Snell situation too. I mean, again, I say this on almost every show, and I say it all the time on Twitter. It was actually pinned to my Twitter feed for a while that talent wins over 162 games. And you can't outmanage talent. You are what you are. Casey Stengel won how many World Series with the Yankees? And then he lost 120 games with the Mets in 62. Did he forget how to manage?
Yeah.
No, he didn't have the talent. But in a short series, that's where managing, or sometimes the lack of managing, really comes in. Because your expected results over a long sample size, it will play out doing these type of moves that we find frustrating on a night-by-night basis. But in the playoffs, you don't have the luxury of a long runway. You lose game 3 on a questionable decision that doesn't make any baseball logical sense. You just lost 1 game out of 4 you can't lose. And it got Grady Little fired with the Red Sox. I would have fired Kevin Cash on the spot in game 6. Like, I would have gone right out there.
But let me say, why would you? Why were you more upset? Because Blake Snell was taken out, or because of who came to replace him in Nick Anderson?
Take him out. The takeout was the Nick Anderson thing. We all know he was toast by that point, but I was already, because I saw him warming up. And I turned to my wife. I'm like, they're going to pull him. She's like, no way. I'm like, they're going to pull him. And I couldn't tell at first who it was because we were over here and it was way out there. But it's just the fact that he's your ace. Think of all the guys and think of World Series performances in the past, like Randy Johnson's and the Kurt Schillings and all these guys that just, this is where they become historic and they become great for, doing more you have to do. I remember Dwight Gooden in 86. There was a playoff game. It was the NLCS against Houston. They never pitched him more than 9 innings back then. And it was a tie game. He pitched 11 innings. And I remember at the time thinking, they're crazy. They're going to kill this. They're going to ruin his arm. But it's like, you have to, at the end of the day, your best 9 players in a short sample size. And to me, Blake Snell is better than anybody in that bullpen at that moment. And to make that decision based on your formula, which may work over a long period of games, but you don't have any margin for error, none. Especially in a game 6 where you lose, you go home. To me, it was Grady Little bad, and he should have been fired on the spot.
I don't think he should be fired on the spot because I think he's basically doing what they want him to do. So that's why he should be fired. But
that's why they'll never fire him. That is why he should.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah, that's better wording. Yeah. But I think I've made my peace. It took me a long time to make my peace with that Snell takeout. But I just ultimately, as a baseball fan that believes in that C word, clutch, and that magic that is sports, professional sports. I mean, as a Rays fan, especially, how do you not believe in magic and in clutch when there's a game 162 and there's a game 4 and there's a Brasso game? Like, how do you not believe in magic and clutch? I don't believe as a Rays fan, at least.
You can believe in magic without relying on magic. That's exactly the difference. So
don't rely on it. So
is not magic. He's great.
No, but at that night, he was throwing seeds, man. He was throwing seeds left and right and up and down. And you hear the post-game conferences by the Dodgers, by the Mookie Betts, by the Cody Bellingers, by the Chris Taylors of the world. And they all were ecstatic in the dugout when they took out Blake Snell. Why? Because sports, what's that Yogi Berra quote? Baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical, or whatever it is.
90% of the game is half mental.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So when you're not getting hits, when you're basically getting bloopers and they take that guy out, the mental stress of somebody new, a new angle, that helps that other team. So that's something I think it's missing in that statistical analysis that they follow. And I do agree with you that in short series, a manager's move or lack of a move can be more poignant into them being perceived as the detriment of a loss than in a 162 series, in a 162 season.
The thing we always talk about in these short series is managers get too involved because starters only go 3 innings, 2 1/3, the bullpen's up. But again, who are the 2 guys that are no longer on this team from last year? Austin Meadows and Joey Wendell. How many at-bats did those guys have in that series? They had 3 each.
I do not understand how Joey Wendell was kept on the bench in game 5, right? No, game 4. Yeah, game 4, because it was a short series. So, with Yandy Diaz at third defensively in the 9th inning, how do you not make that switch, Yandy and Joey? And how does Austin Meadows, who hits a home run or a couple home runs in that series, basically doesn't see any more at bats?
They're all stars.
They're all stars. I feel like that series, if I were to watch it again, I would count the Kevin Crash moments, and I would again be very, very angry and very disappointed.
And it's not something just get over it, because ask an Indian fan. Ask a fan of Seattle, who hasn't been in the playoffs for 20 years. To get into the playoffs, it's the hardest sport to get into the playoffs of any of the major sports. And to win a World Series is very, very difficult. Add on to the fact that we are a low budget team we have no margin for error for anything. Yeah. It's not we're not the Dodgers, who are guaranteed the playoffs every year. Right. This could be over. We could be done for another decade until we get a new stadium or something. But to blow an opportunity like that and just be get over it, we'll be back. There is no we'll be getting back. And
it's not an assurance thing. I mean, when you have the Yankees, who have gotten smarter this year, they went smarter. And you went you know what that matters? Defense. You know what matters? Having a good receptor behind the dish. What is Tampa doing? Tampa has always really good defensive catchers, even if they hit 150. It doesn't matter. We should do that. And guess what? They got a guy who did that, and accept the fact that Joey Trevino has now become
he became their
Gianna
Navarro, and all of a sudden started hitting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
IKF, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, like, he's just a glove first guy. And they were like, you know what? We should just move Glaber to second, and that'll make our defense better. Get Josh Donaldson. We've got the money. Who cares? He makes our third base defense better. Like, they have gotten better, and they have stacks under the cushions that they never use. The Red Sox, they got smarter. Kyan Bloom, they beat us last year, right? So they got smarter, and they've got money. And then Toronto Blue Jays have a great, talented young group, and they've got money to spend. And now the Orioles, after draft picking number one, after number one, now they have a scary lineup. They have a good bullpen. They need to work on their starting pitching, but they're still above 500. So you're telling us that it's an assured thing to go to the playoffs every year? Nah, not at all.
And then
it's very difficult.
When you have 18 guys on the injured list, things like that. I mean, Yankee fans, again, they live in their own delusional world, but they don't like Brian Cashman because of the playoff, screw ups. They don't win in the playoffs or anything, but you build a team for what to get through 162. You don't build a team to face the Astros in a short series, because short series are too random. They're too, one wild pitch, you could lose a game. And that's, could be 25% of your series.
Nick Anderson, game 6.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, you build a team, and Brian Cashman for 20 years, first with the payrolls, and ever since the Steinbrenner said, we're not paying the luxury tax, has rebuilt this team in a way that's younger, better defense, more versatile players, guys off the scrap heap that all of a sudden start playing. I mean, the fan up here doesn't like the Steinbrenners, so they don't spend money, and that goes into they got to get Soto. It's like, no, you don't. You don't need him. Yeah, I don't know. We got about 70 games left this season. I just hope we could just stay afloat, and because again, you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. I mean, I'm sure most Rays fans were looking past the Red Sox last year, and how many wild card teams have won the World Series? How many number one overalls have not won the World Series? It's just get in.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot, man. Just get in, and then you'll be fine. But hopefully they get in. I think they will. I think they've got the reinforcements coming. Hopefully one of those young guys can step it up offensively, like we talked about, and then we will be a little bit less cranky, all of us.
Well, I'm sure I'll find something. Don't worry. I really appreciate you coming on. Tell Rays Nation where we can find you and Locked On Rays.
Well, you can find Locked On Rays podcast in every podcast platform. Obviously, we would encourage people to go to YouTube and subscribe.
Get them to 300 viewers, please. Can we do that?
That would be nice. So that's fantastic. So we'll go over there. We're working on getting to Yandy Diaz's on-base percentage. So that'll be great. And you can find me personally on Twitter at Sambrano Ulises, and I always retweet our stuff there. So thanks for having me on, man. It was a blast talking Rays baseball with you.
I'm trying to get to Taylor Wall's batting average myself for viewers, but we'll get there as well. So
yes,
as always, you can catch me on Twitter at the Cranky Fan, and also my companion show, the Just Giants podcast with the Football Grump. We actually have training camp starting this week, so lots more football content over there. Here we'll continue to talk Rays and Gators as we're getting ready for football season to start here. So Ulises, thanks again. I really appreciate you coming on and helping me get this launched. Watch out for those DMs coming in. I might even have to sneak onto your show once or twice to give you guys some grief. So I really do appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you,
man.
All
right. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.